There you go.
Okay, sorry about that. So, classic charge controller, MPPT charge controller. Comes in three models, the 150, the 200, and the 250. Those numbers stand for the maximum voltage it will run to. The 150 is good for up to 96 amps, the 200 is good for up to 79 amps, and the 250 is good for up to 64 amps. They will all charge up to a 72 volt battery, anywhere from 12 to 72 or anything in the middle. There's three versions of the Classic, and this slide is talking about the Standard Classic. The Standard Classic comes with the LCD display and push buttons as shown. The Standard Classic comes with the arc fault detection. They all come with ground fault protection. They all come with data logging, and the Classic and the Classic Lite come with internet capabilities. They all have HyperVOC, which allows them in a cold climate like Boston to allows you to design around the average cold, not the record cold is what it does. Again, you don't want to design up into that, and I'm trying to figure out who's typing here. Hold on a second. It went away. Okay. The regular Classic will do solar, wind, or hydro. The Classic Lite will do solar, wind, or hydro as well. You will need to have an Ethernet connection to a PC on the Classic Lite. So now we're going to talk about the Classic Lite and the Classic SL. The Classic Lite has basically all the same functions as the regular Classic, except for it has no arc fault and it has no LCD display. It basically has some LEDs and some dip switches to allow you to do the programming. It has all the functionality of the regular Classic, but like we said, it does require you to use our free software to program it via a PC, not actually on the face of it. They all work with the Whiz-Bang Junior. The Classic SL is a solar-only model, less expensive, and a lot easier to navigate the menu items because we've taken out all the stuff that pertains to wind or other stuff. The difference between the Classic SL and the regular Classic is the Classic SL does not have any Ethernet, it does not have any arc fault, and it has a streamlined menu structure that does solar only. It also does not auto EQ, whereas the other ones do. The Classic and the Internet, a unique selling feature of the Classic compared to any other charge controller out there is we have what we call My Midnite, which is a cloud-based monitoring software that's no charge to the customer. Basically, they plug the Classic into the network at their house or their business and tell it to call in. They go to My Midnite, set up an account, and they get online monitoring, monitors about 12 different parameters, and allows them to go on and look at the graphs, look at their system, and just see what's going on. So that's kind of unique to the Classic. That's a nice little feature. It is one-way only. You can see all of the variables, but you can't actually change any. The other thing we give you is we give you the local app software, which is just like it says, it is software. It runs on your PC, not on not in the cloud. It was originally designed to be used on the local area network, in other words, inside your house. But if you're comfortable with port forwarding or anything like that, it's easy to use from outside your residence as well, but you do have to do the port forwarding in the router. The local app allows you to do all of the programming that you do from the face of a regular Classic. It also allows you to export the registers and re-import them. So if you had to do a warranty replacement, or if you was an installer that always used the same kind of batteries, you could keep that file and it would save you a lot of time setting things up. Now we're going to talk about the Kid, and the Kid is a 30 amp MPPT charge controller. The Kid comes in a Marine and a standard version. The Marine version has this bracket shown here. The standard version comes with a plastic ring that mounts it to the wall. It can be mounted in 3 different ways. Like I said, it can have the Marine bracket, can have the plastic wall mount, or you can actually flush mount the Kid into the wall. Comes with a template to cut a hole in the wall, especially if like you're in an RV or marine environment. All the Kids have a LCD display as standard. They will all do 12, 24, 36, or 48 volt battery banks. They all will interface with the Whizbang Junior, which is a single wire current sense module shown down here. Fits on all the standard 500 amp 50 millivolt shunts. And it'll give you state of charge and ending amps and all of that on the display of the kid. Another unique feature of the kid is it has actual 2-wire generator start with feedback. So that's, I think, an industry first on the charge controller front. Really useful if you're doing DC only telecom system, small telecom system, or maybe something in an RV. Yeah, there's a picture of the kid flush mounted. And this is Mario, the engineer that designed the kid. So this is in an RV environment, and it's just showing how you can flush it back into the wall and it doesn't take up a lot of space. The kit also has a fully programmable load circuit. It's a 30 amp load circuit. As pointed out here, it's useful for a variety of different things: lighting, pumping, fans, diversion loads, etc., etc. And then our smaller charge controller, the Brat, it's a 20 amp PWM charge controller with a 10 amp load circuit. If you do not need the load circuit, you can parallel it in and make a 30 amp charge controller out of it. And I'm going to assume that most of you are familiar with the difference between MPPT and PWM. PWM, basically, we have to match the module voltage to the battery voltage to get efficient charging. So if you've got a 24 volt battery and you want to use a single 60 cell module, this is going to work great. It's going to charge that battery. It's real inexpensive. As shown here, it's outdoor rated. You literally can nail the thing to a tree and wire it up and you're good to go. I would probably recommend getting the right wire instead of using extension cord, but hey, and there's a lot of green wires up in here when there's no ground, so I'm not really sure. But anyhow, as shown, you can nail it right to a tree. It's programmed with dip switches and rotary dials. You can just see over here there's a rotary dial for selecting the different lighting controls, and then you can see all the dip switches right here that allow you to do the programming. It's 12 or 24 volt battery right out of the box, same device. And like it says, you can literally nail it to a tree. So moving on to surge protection devices. I'm sure you're all familiar with these. They come in basically 3 voltages and 4 models. So we have the SPD 115, which as it states is maximum 115 volts. It's good for PWM charge controllers, it's good for low voltage control circuits, etc. Don't really want to use it on 120 or 240 volts AC. Then we move down to the SPD 300 AC or SPD 300 DC. Virtually the same SPD. The difference between the AC and the DC is the way the little blue LEDs, you can just see the LED here and here. The difference in the AC and the DC is the way the LEDs light up, so that if you have a DC system, you now get both LEDs instead of only one coming on and having to explain to the customer why the second one isn't on, and et cetera, et cetera. The 300 is great for 120 volt or 120 240 volt circuits. It's also a really good match for most every MPPT charge controller. As we talked about this one being 115, you could use that on say a classic 150 or an Outback FM 80 if you only had a couple modules in series, but I discourage that because if somebody comes in behind you or you show up a few years later and add some more modules, you may decide to add another one in series to save some wiring, and then you're going to be over the voltage. So basically, if you're using anything up to a 300 volt charge controller, use the 300. If you're using the 600 volt Snyder or Morningstar, use the SPD 600. And as we say here, the SPD 600 is generally for grid type PV combiners, but it can be used for 483 phase. It can be used for charge controllers that have a higher input. Here's another little feature we have. This is what we call our flush mount kit for those of you that have electrical services in a sheetrock wall without exposed wiring. This is meant to be able to be cut into that sheetrock wall, and then we give you the flexible conduit and everything to get the wires into the main panel. Specifically designed really to protect the 120/240 load center in a dwelling more than an inverter system. Typically an inverter system, you'll have a place to mount the SPD without the cut-in box. But it's just kind of a neat little asset that you can use when the conditions are right and you need that to look nice and neat and cut it into the wall. The warranty on the SPD is for 5 years. It does cover absolutely anything except for running over it with a bulldozer. If it gets hit by lightning, we'll give you a new one, no problem. Typically what we have done in the past, we've had, I think, 4 or 5 lightning strikes that I can confirm. I've taken pictures of the damage to the SPD and I've sent new ones out to the customer directly so the distributor doesn't have to deal with it. Whatever is easier for the distributor usually is my policy. I'll do whatever is best. In most cases, I think we've had one lightning strike that I can confirm the SPD did absolutely no good. And in that poor guy's case, it literally blew every receptacle and switch out of the wall. It exploded the batteries. There was lead stuck in the ceiling. It blew siding off the building. It blew roofing off the building. I mean, it basically destroyed his house. So in that case, not much is going to persuade that lightning bolt, obviously. The other 2 or 3 cases I've been involved in, once the SPD was removed and once the damage to the surrounding area and the combiner box was repaired, the inverters came back online. So it's pretty cool. It is 4X. It's designed to be mounted outdoors in any orientation, and it is a Type 2 device for UL 1449 Rev 3. Going on to combiners. All of our combiners are made out of powder-coated aluminum. Our regular combiners are all 3R enclosures. All of our combiners are designed to accept our surge protection devices. And most of our combiners, especially our regular combiners, are what we call universal. So as you see in the faded picture in the background here, this box has 6 breakers in it and this one has 4 fuses. It's actually the same box. This would be the MNPV6. And it comes with all the parts to set it up either way. So as a distributor, you only have to stock one part number, or as an installer, they only have to stock one part number. And when they get to the job, if it's a grid tie system, they use fuses. If it's a charge controller, they can use breakers. So that's kind of a neat feature. When you get into the bigger ones, like the MNPV12, you'll see the screws here in the bus bar, and it's one big bus bar. You can actually take those screws out and flip the bus bars over and make this 2 different combiners. Or you could use it for a transformerless or ungrounded system where you could fuse positive and negative in the combiner. So they're fairly versatile. We have models that are good for 150 and 300 volts with breakers. We have models that use our 1,000-volt fuses and fuse holders. So we've got models to do virtually everything, depending on what you need. We can do we've got 3 different models of 1,000-volt combiners. Something worth pointing out is all of our fuses and fuse holders are going to 1,000 volts, but most of the boxes are 600-volt rated. If you need a 1,000-volt combiner, we do have 3 models on the website. Don't use a 600-volt combiner because the insulation ratings are not the same. They are all ETL listed, and every one of our combiners, even our disconnecting combiners, are available as pre-wired as shown here. That can save a lot of time and money on the job depending on the installer and what he's looking to do. So just know that if needed, we can do them all in pre-wired. And then moving on to AC combiners for microinverters. Everybody thinks of Enphase, I think, when they hear microinverters, but there's a lot of new players on the market, a lot of new stuff coming out, interesting stuff. So on the left here, in the background transparent there is what we call the Enphase combiner. If you're familiar with Enphase, which I'm sure you are, the regular Envoy is being phased out. The new Envoy, I think it's called the Envoy S. They actually have a combiner box. It looks almost identical to this one. We actually contract manufactured for them for a while to build those. You will see that product if you're using the Enphase. But the regular old Enphase one was a 2 or 3 string model. It's a 3R enclosure for outdoor installations, available from us with or without the Envoy energy management unit. Easily accommodates an SPD 300 AC, and it does have a transparent polycarbonate dead front, basically a plexiglass dead front in the back here to keep anybody from touching anything live when they do open the door on it. It is listed to 1741, UL listed. And then our old tried and true over here is what we call the MNPV6-Disco AC Micro. And basically quite similar to the Enphase one, except for it doesn't have room for all of the Envoy and everything else. It's basically just a combiner. It will take up to 3 2-pole 120 240 volt breakers and combine them to a single circuit back to the mains. It has bus bars that are rated for, I believe, about 180 amps, so it actually can be used for a recombiner as well. And what I mean by that is, let's say you had 9 strings of N-phase on a commercial project. You could run 3 into a box, 3 into another box, 3 into another box, and all 3 of those boxes could be combined to a single one of these as a master disconnect if wanted. So there's a lot of flexibility in that box. So, like I said, 3 strings of 120 240 volt microinverters. You can actually mix AC and DC in this box as well. So if you had a grid tie inverter that didn't have a DC disconnect and you were trying to be as compliant as possible, you could put a 600 volt DC breaker in here, and a 120 240 volt breaker in here to disconnect that grid tie inverter. It is lockable in the off position, and it is ETL listed for use in the US and Canada. And then moving up into disconnecting combiners, we have 4, 6, 8, and 16 string combiners. There's a variety of different models in 4X and 3R style. The 4X can be mounted in any orientation whatsoever. The 3R has to be mounted between 90 degrees being vertical and 14 degrees often horizontal. So it's a pretty good range. It'll go down to a 312 roof pitch, so that's a good number to remember. The PV8 and the PV16 models are what we call field reconfigurable or convertible. A little hard to see in this picture here, but you'll see there's 8 fuses here and 8 fuses here, and there's a bus bar missing in this picture for some strange reason. But there's supposed to be 2 positive bus bars and 2 negative bus bars, and you would configure this in the field if you wanted it to do 8 strings positive, 8 strings negative for transformerless, or if you want to do it 16 strings into one large inverter, or if you want to do 8 strings into one inverter and 8 strings into another, completely isolated through the switch. All the parts and pieces the installer needs are in there. All the strain reliefs, the SPD, everything they're going to need to do that job is inside the box. And I believe configured by us, it's configured as a 16-string grounded inverter. And then if they want to do something different, they just change some jumpers on the switch and take this out or in to configure that in the field. And all models of the disconnecting combiners except for the MNPV4 basic are compliant with our rapid shutdown system. So if you're having to comply with rapid shutdown and you're using our equipment, when you order the combiner box, order it as a -PSB, and we will install a power supply board in it for you and test it. We charge no additional cost to do that, just the cost of the board. So, you know, if you paid X dollars for the board and X dollars from the combiner, that's the same price we're going to charge you. We're just going to assemble and test it for you. That's good to know, because for an installer out in the field, installing that power supply board can be about 30 minutes of work. And then moving into boxes that are not combiners, if you're doing something like an SMA TL 5,000 watt inverter, it's got dual channel MPPT, you know, you're going to need something to still meet code and do the rapid shutdown. So we have these boxes we call the SOBs, shut-off boxes. They break the positive and negative coming from the array. They come in what we call a 2-channel or a 4-channel. The 2-channel is shown here is a single string in and back out of the switch. So in reality, it would be a you probably call it 1 channel. We called it 2 because you can use it for 300 volt charge controllers, and you can actually run 2 controllers on it. That's a topic for another day, but anyways, just know that the 2-channel is a single string through. The 4-channel is 2 strings through. So if you're doing that 5 kilowatt SMA TL with 2 channels of MPPT, you'd want the 4-pole SOB. And that's also important to note that we have a document available to you that shows all of the common grid tie inverters in what boxes you'd use with them and all the other parts and pieces to make a compliant rapid shutdown system. So we can always supply that as well if something that's of interest. Again, the shut-off boxes come in 3R or 4X. They are 600 volt maximum, and they are available in a 20 amp version or a 75 amp version. The 75 amp version is important to remember because if you're dealing with rapid shutdown and you run into an issue where you've got cap bleed down issues and the grid tie inverter is holding that voltage too long and the inspector dings you on it, you can drop the 75 amp version right at the inverter and it will disconnect it and gets rid of the cap bleed down. I have a question asking where can that document be found about the rapid shutdown products. If you want to email me, ryan@midnitesolar.com, or just webinars@midnitesolar.com, I will supply that document, and if I can remember after the webinar, I will actually shoot it off to Owen as well, and he can distribute it as well. So we will definitely get that out to you. So one of the things we didn't talk about there, and I'm going to back up a little bit, we didn't talk about the DLTL. So knowing that most all inverters today are transformerless, knowing they most all have dual channel MPPT, the two most common boxes that we sell are these SOBs in the 4-pole or the DLTL8. And all the DLTL8 is, it's the same thing as this 4-pole SOB, except for it will take 4 strings in and output 2 isolated, channels. It has fusing in here instead of just the terminal blocks. And I actually think there might have been a picture. No, there wasn't a picture. I apologize for that. I'll have to make sure I add that slide. But just know that if you're running into something like a 10 kilowatt transformerless, then you're probably going to want the DLTL. If you're looking at a 3.5 to 5 kilowatt transformerless inverter, you're probably looking at the SOB. And again, that document that I'll distribute really does a good job of showing what box to use where. And moving into rapid shutdown, we have a complete UL listed rapid shutdown system that will interface with everything from your backup generator to your alarm system. So it's a very sophisticated system in that respect, or versatile might be a better word. We have probably the only system I know of that actually gives you visual and audio feedback. The system actually worked correctly. Most systems are just a contactor and they open when the grid fails. The problem with that is contactors can weld and there's no error lights, if you will, because there's no feedback. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are, UL did not require feedback. They're going to go with the fact that if the switch says off, firefighters should feel safe. So anyways, we felt strongly to leave the feedback in there. It gives you the actual, warm fuzzy feeling that when you push the button, something actually did happen, and the feedback link is telling us that it did. The initiator was what we call the birdhouse, and seeing all of you, I believe, are in Boston, you don't want to order the red one. You definitely want to order the gray one. I got a very upset call from a fire marshal, or I think it was a fire marshal. It might have been one of the fire chiefs in Somerville, who was really upset with me about this red box because it looks a lot like the fire boxes you guys still use in that area. And that's when we invented the gray one, and that took care of that. So red is not allowed in the greater Boston area, just as an FYI. And we already talked about the positive feedback. The birdhouse is what we consider 3R. It is a UV resistant plastic enclosure. It meets 2014 NEC 690.12. We won't even go into 2017. The good news is for you guys, the whole module level shutdown portion of 2017 690.12 does not take effect until January of 2019. So even though you adopt the code on January 1st next year, the module level shutdown will not be allowed to be enforced in Boston until January 1st of 2019. So you have 2.5 more years before you have to deal with the module level stuff that's coming down the road. The birdhouse, like I said, is UL listed, 1741. It is approved for Canadian use as well. We do a lot of work in the battery-based world. It's probably how we're best known to most people, is what we do in the battery-based world. So with that, our rapid shutdown system is completely compliant with battery-based equipment. We can shut off all of the different battery-based inverters out there. We can shut off standby generators if it's an off-grid system. There's just a variety of things we can do with this system. So if you get into a unique rapid shutdown situation and something, you need something to fill a niche, give us a shout. We'll work it through with you. Some of this can be a little overwhelming. There's a lot of pieces and parts. There's a lot of remote trip breakers, but that's what we're here for, and we'll help you out. The disconnect modules, which is what you're looking at here, these trip the remote trip breakers, and these will work on a 24, 36, or 48 volt battery. 12 volt battery, it's not needed because you're below 30 volts. So moving on to pre-wired systems, again, you're probably mostly familiar with them, but we have 4 main categories. We have AC coupled, we have grid tie-off battery backup, we have off-grid, and then we have backup power, or as we call it, UPS. So basically what you're going to find in these is products that have been tailored to fit that market. If you look at a Snyder XW Plus in the AC coupled market, then you're going to get a product that we've actually put in a special relay. So if the generator starts, the grid tie inverter cannot backfeed the generator. So we've tailored that for that use to give you everything you need in the box. No extra work needed by the installer on site to protect anything in an AC coupled scenario. And the same with the UPS. If you get into the UPS category, you're not going to have charge controllers. It's going to be meant just to be a standby, backup system. We pre-wire with all of the major inverter manufacturers, SMA, Snyder, and Magnum. We can do some custom stuff as needed. We typically try not to, but if there's something, a big job that comes up and you need some help or you need a product, give me a call and we'll help you get that set up. Battery enclosures. We've got a full line of battery enclosures, a variety of sizes to work with a variety of batteries. I won't go into a lot of detail on that. As pointed out in the last bullet point here, there's a great document on the website. If you look at the battery enclosures and go to documentation, you'll find a link there that will show you the dimensional drawings of all of them. It'll also show you the common battery sizes that fit those boxes. So that's very helpful when you're sitting there and scratching your head and say, will this battery fit in this box? If the actual model number of the battery is not listed, then you can take the dimensions of the battery, verify it against the dimensional drawing of the battery box and figure out which one you need. All of the battery boxes come with locking doors. The C version only comes completely assembled and has to ship truck freight, and it has a crating fee of $100 for a box. If you buy 2 boxes, we can fit 2 in a crate, so then it's $100 for the 2 boxes. If you buy 3, then it would be $200, etc., etc. All the other boxes come fully knocked down and shipped UPS. The C box is the only one that has to be shipped that way. Most all of our enclosures work with our backup power kits you see here. And basically what that does is that would fit right here. You'll see a couple holes right here actually, and that would fit right here, give you all of the breakers, bus bars, everything you need to put a battery-based inverter on the top shelf and batteries on the bottom shelf. So if you're trying to do something probably not real common in the Boston area, but we've got a lot of customers in the warmer climates that will want a battery backup system. They don't have the room in the house is a slab on grade or no basement or no garage. You can put this outdoor rated box right out in the flower bed, put the inverter in there and some batteries in there, and they've got a backup system. Which does bring me to the next one, which we do have 2 models that are outdoor rated. We have the D3R and then we have the 8D 2x2. Both are powder coated aluminum and outdoor rated. All the other battery boxes are powder coated steel and indoor rated. So then we're going to go into breaker boxes. We have a whole variety of different breaker boxes. We have these mini DCs over here that come as a mini DC, which have a spot down here that you can put either 5 DIN rail breakers or 3 panel mount breakers. It comes with this other side plate here that you can swap out, and you take the DIN rail out and you can do 3 of the panel mount breakers. We have the mini DC Plus, which is the same exact thing, except for it has another one of these locations right up here. So then you could do 10 DIN rail, you could do 6 panel mount, or you could do 5 DIN rail and 3 panel mount in the same box. They come in 4 different ampacities. They come in a 125, a 175, a 250, or what we call a C, which basically comes with a breaker adapter in here that allows you to put our MNE DC breaker in there, which is 5 to 100 amps. So they come in 4 different flavors for that. They are all powder coated aluminum. We move into, we have not shown here, but we do have the MNDC 15, which is a large powder coated steel box that holds up to 15 of our panel mount breakers. So if you're having to do a lot of charge controllers, it's kind of a handy box because you can set 3 or 4 charge controllers on top of it, put all the overcurrent protection in those boxes, clean up your wiring quite a bit. And then we move into the quad box, which is, again, powder coated steel. It has 4 knockouts for the panel mount breakers. So conceivably you could put 4 100 amp breakers in this box. I would discourage that because, as you can see, the box is not huge, and if you start trying to run that much number 4 wire in and out of this box, it's going to get crowded. What I typically tell people is if you're using this for a Classic or an FM80 or a Morningstar, go ahead and get 1 for each charge controller and put the charge controller on top, and that way you've got more wiring room in here. These are not terribly expensive, so you just remember they're also not terribly big. That will come back and make life much easier. All these boxes are listed, by the way, except for the baby box. The baby box is not listed because it does not have the wire bending room as you see here. The big baby box is physically the same footprint as the quad box. The difference is it holds 4 of the DIN rail breakers instead of 4 of the panel mount breakers. The baby box is basically the same thing as the big baby box, except for it's just a lot smaller. It still holds 4 of the DIN rail breakers, but as you can see, it's about half the size. So if you've got to put 1 or 2 breakers in, this box is like really inexpensive, and it's going to make a nice way to do that. This box is not listed, so if you have an inspection on site, you will probably get dinged on this. So if you need something that passes inspection, you want to move up to the big baby box. And that really brings me to the bottom of the list here. This is the first time I've given this PowerPoint, so I might have skipped around and I might have missed something, but I think we covered everything pretty well. Going to open it up to questions here, and also going to give Rachel a chance to comment in case she wants to bring in something that I forgot. She put this presentation together for me, so she's probably sitting there screaming at me because I forgot to mention something. So I'll introduce Rachel, and then we'll open the floor up to questions.
Actually, I don't think that you really forgot anything. It went really well. But just to reiterate what you said, if you guys need anything, if you're looking for something, please don't hesitate to contact us. We're more than happy to, if we can't find it or if we need to talk to somebody, we're more than happy to do that and move on from there. Do you want to show them some of the website?
Yeah, I've got a question about 1000-volt combiners. So I wanted to go ahead and pull that up. And on our website here, if you go to products, you'll find basically the same, sort of the same flow as Rachel put the PowerPoint into. You'll find all the different products here. So under combiners, then we would go down and you'll find the 4 models of 1000-volt combiners. So I think probably the most common one is this one here, this what we call the PV10. It'll take 10 fuses, and it will do, again, these bus bars are universal, so you could bolt them together in the middle and do 10 fuses into a grounded 1000-volt inverter. You could do 5 fuses into one, 5 into another, or you could flip them around like this and do 5 negatives and 5 positives into an ungrounded 1000-volt inverter. So there's some solutions there. One of the things, as the question asks about commercial applications, it's one of the things that we do a very poor job of marketing. We do a lot of work in the commercial world. I've actually been on site and helped on a couple solar farm installations in Massachusetts where the customer has actually used our pre-wired combiners because it makes the job go so much quicker. So sometimes when those odd things come in, reach out to us, because for those of you that know Midnight, you know that our product line changes, and you know that Robin never stops and sleeps, so he's always coming up with something, and there's new things popping up all the time, and Rachel's in charge of all the marketing and all the sales stuff now, so she's doing a much better job of sending out constant contacts and keeping people, up to speed when we do new things, but we are still, like I say, we're traditionally not a company that sits still. So when you come back to our website, you're probably going to see something new that wasn't there last time you were there. Any updates on the special? Can you define special?
I bet you he's talking about the inverter.
Okay. So the inverter is going through some interesting naming conventions right now, and I believe that probably what's going to stick the most is going to be B-17 because it was designed after a radio out of a B-17 plane. We've gone around through Ego, we've gone through Special, so we're open to a lot of suggestions. But as far as updates go, yeah, things are looking really well. We're really excited. We're anticipating having some that are actually making power by SPI. Our goal is to probably let the smoke out of the first one here within a couple weeks, and then the engineers will, go back to work and make some changes, and it's really progressing nicely, I guess is the best way to say it. I believe if any of you are going to be at SPI this year, that's pretty much the only thing that's going to be in our booth. It's going to be really cool. The inverter itself, and it's not an inverter, I should stop saying that. It's actually a power system. So it's not just an inverter, it's the complete system in a package. So that's really cool. Other than that, I can't say a lot more about it other than it's progressing basically on track. We have between 11 and 14 engineers working on it full time. We have 5 or 6 built in-house waiting on circuit boards, and I believe all circuit boards have been ordered, and we're, like I said, we're getting ready to let the smoke out of the first one, and that's the exciting day. So stay tuned on that one. Something else I'll point out, we don't seem to have a lot of questions, and if there is, just like I say, shout, unmute yourself, shout, raise your hand, or type it in. We also have this cool new online help desk, not necessarily for you at Civic, but for your customers. You can pass this on to your customers. It's another portal to our tech support department. Instead of having to pick up the phone and call if they get a busy signal or things are busy, they can jump into this portal at midnitehelp.com and they can open their own ticket, which then all of the support and sales staff see, and somebody will usually respond almost immediately to that, either by calling the customer back or whatever the customer has requested. But that's just another cool innovative thing that we're trying to just open another avenue into the support structure, because a lot of the stuff is simple questions that your customers have, and they hate to call, and sometimes it's hard to get through on the phone, so they may end up calling you, or what the case may be. So this is just another tool in the toolbox that may allow them just to open a ticket and say, well, how many breakers will fit in this, or what do I need to do here, or whatever.
While you're zipping around the website, could you please show them where the warranty information is, and then also where the string sizing tools are for the Classic and Kid?
Okay, so the string sizing tools, where I know to find them, and I'm sure they're somewhere else, but I know to find them right on the home page. So if you go to our home page and scroll down, you'll find the string sizing tools for both the Classic and the Kid, as well as the code to embed these in your own website if you wanted to do that. And then you wanted me to show them, I apologize, what was the other one? Oh, the warranty documents. So,
yep, and then let's also, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say any documentation. We have this tab called Documents. We have all these wiring diagrams, really cool if you're doing a system, you know, or if customers doing a system and they want to know how to wire it, they can go here and pull up a wiring diagram, and it's just, you know, it's really nice. There's examples for virtually every system out there, and you'll see even to the point where we show the customer where to hook up their portion of it. But as Rachel was pointing out, that's the same place where you'd find the warranty info, which is right here under warranty. You would find the authorization to mark from ETL or UL on all of our products and the compliance certificates, dimensional drawings, or if you're into AutoCAD, you'll find the files here to bring stuff into AutoCAD. Just kind of a catch-all for virtually everything. Do you have a question about using the average low in place of the extreme low in the string sizing tools? So that's correct, and let me just show you an example in the string sizing tool, because as far as I know, the Classic is the only one that has what we call HyperVoc, and basically what that's going to mean, I'm just going to hit submit and it will show us something. No, let's put some more modules in series. What HyperVoc allows us to do is allows us to not operate but not blow up either if we exceed the voltage. So a Classic 150 will actually charge batteries at 150 volts. At 151 volts, it's going to go into resting and say HyperVoc, but it will not damage it, unlike most other charge controllers out there. So what that means is that in a place like I'm at in Maine, or Rachel's at in Maine, or you guys are at in Boston, when we get those 2 or 3 days a year that are brutal cold, -20, -30 degrees Fahrenheit, when the sun comes up in the morning, the controller may stay in HyperVoc for 15 or 20 minutes until the modules warm up a little bit, and then it will go to work. But it's not going to damage it. So it just gives us a little flexibility in how we design that system. Whereas before, for instance, let's say you were using 72 cell modules on an FM80, you were limited to 2, period. There was just no way around it, because 3 would exceed the 145 volt limit in an extreme cold morning. So we always had the design around that record cold. Now with the HyperVoc being that basically that safety buffer, and it's important to remember it's non-operational, but remembering that's that safety zone, that allows us to design around the average cold morning instead of worrying about the record cold, 100-year record cold, or whatever that number may be. And it just allows us to be a little bit more flexible with our system design. And what you'll see on our string sizing tool, once you plug in all your pertinent information over here, you'll plug in your environmental data, what you're think you're looking to do for a string size here. You'll hit submit and you'll come up with this information over here. And basically what you're really looking at is going to be this design checkbox down here. And as you'll see here on a Classic 150, we're always going to be in HyperVoc. So that's not going to work. As far as the array power goes, it was fine. It wasn't going to damage anything, or it wasn't going to be overpowering it, but it was never going to wake up. Then if we move over to the 200, we would say, okay, this one's going to not go into HyperVoc until -75C, so we're probably in good shape. Now let's say we want to do 4 strings instead of 2, and I'm not sure why that's not all fitting on my screen for some reason today. You'll see here now, it shows over here that this one's excessive, but the 1.1 is still green. And if you guys have done a bunch of grid tie stuff, you know what I'm thinking here is that PV modules don't actually produce what the manufacturer rates them for. They're usually around 80%. The rating on the module is in what they call standard test conditions, or STC. And rarely do we ever see that. So the Classic, like pretty much every grid tie inverter out there, is very, very tolerant of being overdriven, meaning that if it's able to do 5,000 watts, you're not going to hurt it by putting 7,000 watts on it. You're just only going to get 5,000 watts out of it. So we say excessive as far as the wattage goes, but we also tell you that it's still only going to need 1.1 Classics, so most likely it's not worth investing in a second Classic for that array design.
And could you also take them to the landing pages for the different, we have it for the Classic, the Kid, the Brat, and the SPDs, just because it's a really awesome resource for them to point their their customers in as far as finding manuals and wiring diagrams and stuff.
How do I get there?
midnitesolar.com/kid,
Okay.
or Classic, or SPD, or Brat. The Kid is my favorite.
So something we've been working on slowly behind the scenes is Rob has been building us what we call landing pages for specific product. Some we do a magazine article or a piece of literature or whatever. It's a quick, drop web page for everything to do with that product. As you'll see here, we've got, some listings on retail outlets where you can buy it. We've got the menu maps, we've got documentation, we've got some explanations over here, even some flow diagrams and the sizing tool, and even as far as some recommended accessories to go with that kit. And the same would hold true for the other products, like she said, the Classic or SPD. I've got a question about battery enclosures and the 8D, and that's so the question would be, do you normally do 4 batteries? Do you normally do 2? But I'll give you a quick rundown anyway. So under products, under battery enclosures, this box here was very specifically designed for 8D batteries. That's why it has it in its title. And it'll actually hold 2 on the top shelf, 2 on the bottom. And that box comes in 2 versions. It comes in a basic and a deluxe. The only difference is the deluxe actually has a breaker installed here, and it comes with all the cabling, so that when the customer gets it, all they got to do is run the 2 cables to their inverter, and they already have overcurrent protection in the box. These are outdoor rated powder coated aluminum. And yes, the drawing I was talking about, if we go to documents here, and all of our products will have this document and webinar and photo download. So if you need high resolution photos, they're here. If you want to see any training videos or webinars we've done about it, they would be under this one, and then documents. So under documents, I believe we're looking at this. In general, you'll see dimensional drawings for each particular product, but this is that document I was talking about, the battery enclosures PDF. And as you see here, they'll give a list of the common batteries that fit in it. And then if we scroll down, we actually get dimensional drawings of the actual product. So if you were doing 2 8Ds, you would probably be looking at, I believe it's this, I'm trying to figure out why that's got a C in front of the 8D. Okay, so this actually is left over from this up here. I see what's going on. The space is in the wrong spot. So this is the C box I was talking about earlier that has to be shipped in a crate, fully assembled. Standard, it comes with 3 shelves as shown and will hold these batteries. Optionally, you can get a 4th shelf installed and do 4 8Ds, or you can do it as a 2 shelf and do CL16s. This box down here, which is the D, the D will actually hold 2 of the 8Ds. So it's just going to depend on how many of the 8Ds you're looking to do. But again, this is the document you want handy, because it's going to show you the dimensional drawings and allow you to determine what will fit when the customer is asking questions. Okay, yeah, and if you do 8 of the 8Ds, one of the cool things is this enclosure here was specifically made to stack one on top of the other. So you could do 4 in this one and 4 in the one above it. The manual, if you was to download the manual, it'll show you how to stack it. There's a drill pattern to drill the top of this one to bolt the 2 together. Pretty cool setup. Well, so far we haven't got any other questions. I'm not sure if anybody else has got anything, or if we covered everything sufficiently. I will work on getting that document out to Owen and anybody else that emails me and requests it to show you the compatibility between the disconnecting combiners and grid tie inverters. And one thing that we did, when you go to products, like I just did, you'll see everything categorized, but we actually add a whole category for rapid shutdown system components. So there's another place, and I'll show you that DLTL real quick because it makes a lot more sense when you see it. So as you can see, it's got 8 fuse holders, but you'll notice there's 2 negatives, 2 positives, and there's a space. There's 2 negatives and 2 positives. So that's actually, you know, this would be 2 strings in, 1 string out, 2 strings in here, 1 string out. So it's a combiner and a pass-through at the same time. And yeah, is there any way I could email the PowerPoint? And yes, there is. If you get a hold of me later, send me an email, webinars@midnitesolar.com. I will definitely get you a copy of this. Um, can you go over the difference between shut-off boxes and rapid shutdown birdhouses? Sure. So the big difference would really be that the birdhouse is the initiator. The shut-off boxes are the initiated device, so you need both. So the birdhouse is going to be what tells this to turn off. And so you need 1 birdhouse minimum for the system, and then you need whatever box you need to do the the disconnecting of the array, if that makes sense. And all of these boxes here are what would be called the initiated device, the device doing the rapid shutdown. And as I pointed out, you add the dash PSB, and we install this power supply board in it for you. And then up top is the birdhouse red or gray, same price. And then at the very bottom, there's the Cat5 cable. One thing to point out as a distributor, it's important you know this. Be very careful calling this Cat5 cable, because in reality we're using it as a low voltage DC signal cable. It's all analog. There's no digital on this anywhere. And sometimes if the installer uses the word Cat5, the inspector will freak out on him, and he'll want this in its own conduit, shielded and everything else. It's not being used as Cat5 cable, so we don't need to worry about that. This cable that we sell is rated for 600 volts. It is UL listed for that. It is outdoor rated, it's direct burial rated, so this is, this is good stuff, and you can not get into trouble with it being in the same place as a PV wire because it is rated for 600 volts. Oh, anything else? Any other questions? Rachel, got anything to add? Well, I think that pretty well wraps it up then if we haven't got any other questions. I again want to thank everybody for taking an hour out of their afternoon and listen to me ramble, and feel free to reach out to me anytime. Like I say, my contact info is on the website, as well as Rachel's and everybody else's here. My cell phone is posted on the website. I tend to be on the road a lot, but don't be afraid to email me or call me anytime. I will get back to you. Sometimes it takes me 24 hours, but I will get back to you. So thank you everybody for coming out. Have a good day, and anybody that wants this, email me, and I will definitely get this out to you.